तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै. ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Okay, so Indriyartheshu Vairagyam, it also your relationship with two things which are very important: relationship with wealth and relationship with um, human beings, both, right? And a certain objectivity that no human being can also satisfy all your needs, but life, a human being is a social being, and life is lived with human beings, and how to make your relationships work to the best extent possible. So that is the value. The next value, Indriyartheshu Vairagyam, the next value is Anahankara. That is also what we saw, and this is what we have seen so far. What is Anahankara? Does anybody remember? Sorry.
Yeah.
It's not identifying with the I sense.
Yeah. So I sense, you're right. The ultimate goal is to understand I sense is not my ultimate reality. But right now we are talking about values. So here it is first freeing yourself from either superiority or inferiority, which is your added superimposition on your I sense, and just make it healthy. So that is the first job, and the second job is to understand that I sense is not my final truth, right? It's the way my mind operates. So Anahankara here is, right now as a value, it means that a healthy self-esteem, sense of I, which is free from two types of distortions, which is exaggerated importance and self-depreciation. So this is the value. Yeah? So is this clear? All these values. Let's move to the next value, which is, so we have done 12 values up to now.
11.
No, with Anahankara, it becomes 12. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
No, that's I think you forgot this. That was only the grammar you were explaining.
What?
Acharya Upasanam. So you're counting it twice.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You're right. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
The 10th man.
Huh?
The 10th man.
The 10th one. We forgot.
So you are the 12th.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Okay. Okay. Anahankara evacha janma mrityu. The next value is janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha doshana darshanam. This is a long sentence, but I'm just going to write it. This is the value. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, Dukkha, Dosha, Anudarshanam. This is the value. And this is a very interesting value. What it means is that one has to recognize the limitation of human life. This is the value. And what does it mean? human birth, even though it's a highly privileged birth, why is it a privileged birth? Because moksha is a possibility in this birth, because your mind can remove the ignorance and see the truth. So it's a highly privileged birth, but at the same time, it is fraught with challenges. So, what are the challenges, right? One is the birth itself is a painful process for the child, because the child is very safe in mother's womb. Everything is provided and it is just nicely resting. And even to come out, it is a struggle. So what they through this small little thing, pathways, they have to, they keep telling the mother to push the child so that the child comes out. And the minute the child comes out, the child starts crying. Because all the safety, all the calmness is no longer. Now you are released in this vast world. And you get your identity. So this is something that itself is a huge event. Birth is a big event. Nobody remembers how we felt at the time of coming out, but it is something which is traumatic in some ways. The birth itself is a traumatic. Then janma is birth, mrityu. The minute something is born, going away, death is nobody can avoid. So that means that a whole life, what we have to confront with, right? Even if you feel generally privileged, generally blessed, you cannot avoid certain discomfort that, when you think about death. This is why in no social gatherings you hear people talking about death. Why? Uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. You cannot fathom, right? So I remember when I was 11 years old, somehow I came to know that somebody passed away. So that's the first time I really actually, was able to understand, or I was able to see the implication of somebody going away forever and you never see them again, ever, in that form. And the first thing that came to my mind, that was somebody little bit, not totally close family. But the first thing that I still remember, right? I was 11 years old and my whole thing was, I loved my father, and I said, my God, does it mean that I have to lose him one day? And that was even that thought was so huge for me, that somebody that I love so much is going to go away one day, never to return. And along with that, right, and so not only others, but then you also have to confront with your own mortality. That not only others are going to disappear, you are going to disappear from this earth. Nobody remains. And especially when you love somebody, right? So Swamiji was so important for so many of us. And, and it was a difficult time because he was sick, and, some people wanted very aggressive treatment, and some people said, no, you have to let him go now, because, you can't keep pushing the body with all kinds of treatments and, things like that. It has to end at one point in time. But there were others who could not handle that they are going to lose him. So there was such a tense environment because everybody was sad, but along with sadness, all these other things started emerging. And and I really felt for myself that, when somebody is so important for you, you think that person is going to be there with you forever. And then when you see that person also goes, it's very tough. So that means death is the part of life, but it is one of the biggest, it's hard. So there is a certain suffering that you can't avoid, even though there is wisdom. So there was when Lord Rama, he was in the forest, he came to know that his father Dashratha has passed away. Just thinking about him. And he was crying. He was crying because he said, my God, my father loved me so much. And after I went to the forest, he felt sick, and the only thing that he was thinking about is me. And I'm not going to see him again anymore. So that means Janma, Mrityu is part of life. Even if you have a good life, death is around the corner. And you don't know when. It can be tomorrow, it can be 50 years, 30 years from now, it can be 15 years. Nobody knows. It's a suspense. But it keeps bothering you. So, Janma, Mrityu, Jara. If you survive death for long enough time, old age. And old age means all your physical capabilities. You yourself have to come to terms with that you can't walk as much anymore. You can't eat as much anymore. You get tired much more quickly. Your senses don't cooperate. And that decline is extremely hard. And it's not about somebody else, it's you, your old age. So that means the human life is, coming with certain conditions which themselves are unnerving at times. We don't think about it, but this is how it is. Janma, Mrityu, Jara. Now suppose you are young, you can say, yeah, old age is still long way away. Right? Let me enjoy life. Then what? Vyadhi. What is Vyadhi? Life will not spare you from young people can have diseases. So, not whole life, but you can, during COVID, how many young people fell sick and they had to be hospitalized? How many times something happens to, somebody who's young and they end up in the hospital. So that means there is Vyadhi, physical affliction and diseases, as well as mental afflictions. Disappointments, sadness, fears, all of this we all have to deal with. So Vyadhi, and this, what is the value? Dukkha doshanu darshanam. Understanding the limitation of human life. An inherent suffering, which is connected to this human condition. Now, one thing is, there are many things to think about in this. And the first thing is, how many of us, or when you were young, for how many of you, your parents told you what life is about? How many of them prepared you for this life that all of us have to go through? And nobody is spared.
So only school and education and of course love and affection, but not
Not this.
Yeah.
Not about life. And this is why this is what life will bring for everyone without an exception. So that means we have to think about how many of us are actually prepared for the reality of life. Who even tells us the truth about, the journey is, of course there are a lot of pleasures, there is a lot of success, So I have a friend who was telling me that again from a high achiever family, that you have to go to good schools, you have to have good jobs, and you have to have family, then you have to have nice house, then you have to have nice cars, and so all of this. And she said that I have everything that they told me that you have to have, but they never told me what happens along the way. You get all of that, right? Because you're driven, you are doing it. But how many things you have to see along the way? And who prepares you for that? So what it then means is, that's why many teenagers are highly idealistic. And what does it mean? That they feel powerful and they feel that they can change the world. And they think that they can do so many things. Then over a period of time, as you grow up, you recognize, hey, I'm not able to change the world. In fact, the opposite problem comes. And that is, I feel helpless at times. I feel powerless at times. I feel redundant at times. I feel, what can I do? And that is shocking. So what it means is, this is what we call maladaptation to reality. There is a certain truth about life, and nobody is taught that life journey means this. So that means when all of this comes for everybody, they don't know how to face it, because their mind is not ready for it. What it means is there is no resilience. So there is a nice story about Gautam Buddha. Do you know the story about Gautam Buddha? So Gautam Buddha is Buddha, right? So he was Siddhartha when he was young. And when he was just born, the parent, he was born to a king, he was a prince. And the father went to an astrologer, and the father said, what about this boy, right? He was jubilant that he gave birth to this boy. And the astrologer said that this child is extraordinary. Either he will become the greatest king ever, extremely powerful and extremely successful, or he will give up everything and he will renounce everything, and he will just make some tremendous progress in evolving as a human being. Now, for every father, right, that evolving and spiritual and all sounds all wishy-washy. So the father, especially being the king, he wanted to make sure that Siddhartha becomes this amazing king, which is a possibility in his horoscope. So now, the father himself thinks, how do I make him, the prince who is the king and highly successful and well accomplished with everything. So he says, let me, when does a person begin to think about spirituality? When they see some suffering. Suffering is one of the ways. Not everybody has to suffer, but suffering is a big instigator for you to look for answers. So it takes you to spirituality. So the father said, being a prince and a king, he says, let this Siddhartha grow up in my palace where he sees no suffering at all. So that means he's protected from seeing old people. He's protected from seeing sickness. He's protected. Everything that is given to him is just beautiful and rosy. So Gautam Siddhartha grows up as a very happy child because he sees nothing which has a downside. He sees nothing which is negative. Now, but you can't live whole life only in one palace locked up. So one day he has to go and see his maternal grandfather. So he has to undertake a journey. from his palace to his mother's. Mother was also a princess, so to her palace. So a beautiful chariot was prepared so that he can do this journey comfortably. And what happens is, on the way, the first thing he sees is one old lady. And he has never seen anybody old. His heart is so moved. It's like, my God, she's struggling to walk. She has a stick and she's, for simple things that people can do, she is unable to do it. And his heart was broken. Then he travels a little more and he sees a beggar. And he says, my God, I have plenty of everything. When I want to eat, 100 different items are in front of me. And I have to choose and I have to keep saying, no, this is enough. And look at this person, she doesn't have anything and she's begging. Yet another shock. Then he travels a little bit further and he sees somebody with crippled body, disease. In one journey, he sees reality of life. And that's when he really begins to, so that since then there is a permanent change in him. This is how the story goes. There's a permanent change in him. He still continues to be the prince, but this haunts him. And he marries, he has a child, he does everything. But at one day, right, all these impressions that he has seen, that he hasn't processed, he has never talked about it, is really looming so large that in order to find the answer, he walks out of the palace. So the astrologer who said that he will give up everything and he will, become highly spiritual, it came true. So what it means is, how long can you protect yourself or your loved one from this truth about life? You have to, if you want to make them successful, you have to, make them see that, hey, there are a lot of beauties in life. There are success, there are glories, there are things. But life comes with this mishra. Mishra means mixture. And no human being can escape it. Now, and what is the purpose for that? So that you are not maladapted to reality. Maladapted to reality means reality doesn't render you powerless. You are able to understand that this is a reality and you are still able to face the reality and you are able to, overcome. Overcome doesn't mean that you overcome death. That's not possible. But emotionally, you are not that, I lost this person, so I'll be depressed for the rest of my life. You are able to pick yourself up. That is called resilience. The first time you hear that your body, right, the people who have had cancer, so the first time they hear that they have cancer, it is devastating for them. But either you are just devastated or you pick yourself up. That ability to pick yourself up and to face is called resilience. So that you are not like completely broken by life and the circumstances that you have to go through. So, so what is this value about? Being realistic, but realistic and therefore also when you see life for what it is, gaining resilience to face every situation that comes to you. when you're not in denial. A simple Bollywood movie understands that, right? Who is a hero? Not the person who never has any difficulty. Every hero has difficulty, but how come he is a hero? Because he's able to rise up. He's not, overwhelmed by any situation in life. So there are difficulties, but the person is able to rise above. So that is something that we all have to learn. Otherwise, what will happen is you will be dejected about life, and your spirituality will be something like nihilism. Nihilism means I'm so disenchanted with life that now I come to, spirituality. So Swamiji used to say that people, some students used to come to study with him and said, so Swamiji would ask, why are you here? So Swamiji, life is so difficult. And it's full of suffering and I'm tired and I just cannot handle life. That's why I want to come and study Vedanta. So Swamiji would say that if life is really bad for you, you first make it work for you. Then you come and Vedanta will work for you. So Vedanta is not for somebody who's trying to run away from life. Somebody who wants to understand life in its totality. Not satisfied with partial understanding of life. Because if you have partial understanding of life, always you feel something is missing that needs to be addressed. So, this is why this Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, please don't think of it as something which is bad. Why? Because that little suffering that you have, every individual has to go through, can become what? A trigger for you to ask bigger questions. So, either you are just sad and depressed and see no meaning, or you can become a wise person. But this nobody can escape. Now, when you say that the life is, this is kind of a, this value is a little, depressing, right? That now imagine I'm stuck in a life which is fraught with all these limitations and I can't totally avoid it. But what is a value in it? What do you think is a value here? Value means it has to nourish you. It cannot make you scared or dejected. So now this is a little your question, quiz for you. What do you see is a positive in this? What are a few things which are positive in this, which are important?
Understanding life.
Okay. Understanding life and developing resilience so that you can face and challenge without feeling overwhelmed. That is one value. What is the second value?
Humbleness.
A certain humbleness that you no matter which bubble of superiority that you have created, the life always finds a way to bring you back on the ground. Truth, right?
Acceptance.
Yeah, acceptance of things which you can't change.
Love.
Huh?
Love.
Love, excellent. Why?
Yeah, because love makes that you know we are all in the same situation. We can help each other.
Amazing. Nice. Right? We are all in the same situation. We can support each other, right, to make their life beautiful. What else is a value? Which is the value?
Acceptance.
Yeah, acceptance is what she said. Yeah.
Intellect.
Yeah. So now, what is the value is that human life, even though it comes with all these limitations, it also comes with huge opportunity for moksha. So don't waste away this gift of life. Use it for the real goal. And what is it? Otherwise, what will happen? That very soon, right? Suppose your life is hedonist life, and that means only enjoying. There is no go for a holiday, go and eat in nice restaurants, walk on the beach. That's all. Relationships, as many as you want. Hedonist life. Now, what happens is, even for myself, I can see that, I could eat so much when I was young. Now, the same food is there, and now as I'm aging, the quantity that I can consume is so less. When we were young, we were going out and partying at night and all. Bombay is a very modern place. So partying and 2 and 3 in the morning and all. And now, even if somebody tells me, okay, there is a party now by 11, I'm like... So what it means is that the external thing is the same. Your preferences change as you age. And the second thing is your body's capacity to enjoy also deteriorates. The same things. So if hedonism is the goal of your life, then you can't be a winner. So your life goal has to be little more evolved, something more meaningful. And that is when you see this, then you will ask for something. Make use of this time on this earth. Don't waste it away. Otherwise what? Whole life becomes so narrowly defined. Oh, my work, my promotion, my kids, my husband, most of the time people live their life with such small self-defined boundaries and annual vacations. And that's all. And then they see people aging, and then they see people going through diseases. Then they themselves are stressed out. And whole life goes only in that, just dealing with those things. And all your enthusiasm slowly kind of goes down. So this is not what life is meant for. So this value means it's a limited time that you are endowed with this human body. And what you can do to help yourself the most is to get moksha.
How come so few people recognize this truth?
Absolutely, Otto. That itself is a wonder. Because see, the engagement, you are given, this is why Indriyartheshu Vairagyam. You're able to discern what objects can do for you and what they can't do for you. Otherwise, whole life goes in, it's like playing with toys. When you are a kid, you have a Lego to play with.
Lego.
When you become older, it's a stock market. The objects change. But you keep this all, the whole life goes only in just getting, and that's all. And people lose track. Then old, senile, then slowing down, one day disappear.
But still, I know people who find still much pleasure in what they are doing, even if they do a lot of the things for other people.
Absolutely. See, the thing is, so that means, now, see, how you can evolve, it's very good. You can actually do many things. It's not only spirituality. In this condition, now imagine somebody can become a scientist and can discover so many things. So that means, again, it's a life of a dedication. Then somebody can become a very famous artist. world-renowned artist. Somebody can become an excellent sportsman that everybody knows. Who doesn't know of Roger Federer? Everybody knows it. So that means even within this, you can even focus on a small goal and you can accomplish a lot and you can derive a lot of pleasure. But what is interesting is it still makes you lost if you don't discover moksha is the final goal. So either you can be frivolous and hedonist, or you can be very serious and intelligent and get so carried away with one goal, which is a great thing, which will give you a lot of satisfaction, but you miss the main goal. So along this line, I had somebody used to come to Sailorsburg Ashram. Swamiji has an ashram in America, USA, in Poconos Mountains, and he is a great musician. He's an excellent musician, studied with, I don't know if you know the name, I think you may know, Pandit Jasraj. I don't know if you know of him. Very, very famous, very accomplished. And so he, during the retreat, what he does is, in the evening, when there is a question and answer session, like how Yashodhara starts with music, he would start with music. And everybody loves his music. So he stays at the ashram, and every evening he's available for his music concert. But for Swamiji's class, sometimes once in a while he appears. He's staying there, but he's never hardly present. So one day I asked him, I said, you know what, you have this amazing opportunity to stay at the ashram and be with Swamiji and listen to his teaching every day. And how come you are coming only like once in a while? And you know what he replied? He says, but I don't want moksha. Why? What is this? I said a little wisdom here and there is wonderful, right? I come once in a while, catch some interesting ideas. They help me, But moksha and all is, I'm not interested. So I said, why you're not interested? So he says, I derive so much pleasure from my music. When I'm in front of the audience and I'm singing, and when people are appreciating and I lift myself up and the whole audience is lifted, the kind of high that I feel, it is incredible. So why don't I want to come back?
Which is reasonable what he's saying.
Yeah,
But wait.
exactly. Please understand that if people who are not searching for moksha, it's reasonable, right? It's not like they are all totally lost.
But it's not going to last all his life.
Right. He's going to age. His
Absolutely.
voice is just no more so beautiful. It will happen.
Audiences will dwindle.
Yeah.
In the meantime, he's divorced 3 times.
New stars will come out. Push him away.
Yeah, absolutely, right. So, what happens is that that part of life you don't look, but you just look for some highs. And you can derive a lot of pleasure. And this is the thing that is what look at this brilliance of Ishvara. Even within ignorance, how much you can achieve. It's not like you are ignorant, so therefore you are condemned to just suffering. And achieve and also make so many contributions to humanity. Right? As you said, people become huge social entrepreneurs and help so many people and all. They can do amazing things and they feel happy and satisfied, deep satisfaction. So they are not unreasonable. You can't just dismiss them. But at the same time, right, they have not total viveka. There are some goodies, and they are very good things, and they are holding on to that, and they are deriving a lot of pleasure from that. But at the same time, they miss the bigger picture.
What makes the distinction between the seekers and the non-seekers of moksha?
Absolutely. What makes this is something that I have been asking myself, because me as a child, I always thought, and to a certain extent, perhaps true also, I was not totally non-objective, that when I looked at my father, he was much smarter than me. He was much more, sometimes I felt, a generous human being. He was highly dharmic. So I used to wonder, how come he did not search for moksha, and how did I become a searcher for moksha and mumuksha? Because in my vision, he was much more deserving.
It's like you have to see that everything just keeps coming and going and changing. The happiness doesn't stay.
Absolutely.
And then you get obsessed with what stays.
Exactly. So this is what, and what used to happen to him is what, imagine you experience, this musician I'm talking about, you experience extreme highs in your concert. Now the concert is over and you are just a few minutes, people come to you and they say you're great, it's amazing and all that. But after 1 hour, you're just normal person. So a normal person can handle that normalcy. But for somebody who has reached such high peaks, normalcy becomes too low, too boring. So that's why they have to now lift themselves up, because they can't handle what normal people can handle after the peaks that they have seen. So that's why many musicians, one of the drinkers, drug, womanizing, common, because they need to find a kick again. So high accomplishments in one areas, but also quite impoverished and in the other. So we have this. You are not interested in cricket now. Netherlands is playing the World Cup, cricket. Yeah, this year, and they did quite well. None of you are interested, but there was this very, very famous cricket star in India, Virat Kohli, and he was a captain of the team and brilliant batsman, and everybody, the whole nation adores him. And he had a few matches where he was not successful, and he himself came out with it. He got into such a deep depression.
Yes.
Because you have this whole nation admiring you and seeing you as a hero, and people have all these expectations, and they put you on a pedestal, and and then you also are like feeling so good and so important and all. And few matches you fail, you can't handle it.
This is a general problem with all these famous sportsmen.
Absolutely. It's a general problem with all the famous
You see it
sportsmen.
everywhere.
You see it everywhere.
Some people can cope with it, but it's such a burden.
Such a burden.
Yeah, a lot of depression cases.
Lot of depression cases, right? Because peaks, and then they can't handle even just the normal, they can't handle.
And they're still quite young.
And they're still quite young. They are all in their 20s, 30s, they are very young.
And the
Much
media are
expectation.
doing
And the media is bringing, and they have so much money, and they have lavish lifestyle all of a sudden, from simple homes to just like some totally outrageously lavish things and all.
Do you remember how Marilyn Monroe said, "I'm a slave to this Marilyn Monroe"?
So yeah, what did she say?
She said this.
She said
felt
this?
like she's become a slave to this image of Marilyn Monroe.
Oh my
so the
God.
internalized feeling is very far from where she's being
Being-
forced
okay.
to live.
Amazing.
Fame is a cross. It's,
Yeah. Everything comes with quite a big cost. But what happens is, people get attracted to that,
Yeah.
right? And it does give high. Don't think that it doesn't give high.
Because you're no longer small, you're suddenly.
Yeah, you're suddenly big and famous and, you know, on the media and in the eyes of people, and people adore you. Imagine a kick.
I come back to my question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, what makes a distinction?
Yeah.
Because I feel very privileged, and I think the other people that are here now, they have been seekers all their life.
Absolutely.
But what makes a distinction between people not being a seeker?
Yeah, so what makes the difference is what I explained in the introduction to Vedanta class. That all of us are seeking happiness and freedom. But most of us, right, we are seeking freedom, but through artha and kama and dharma. There are only a few who recognize that this is not going to give me. Neither it is going to give me, nor it is going to give anybody else, neither now nor in the future. This is why this discrimination, somehow you may not have thought about it, and you just landed up in the class, but we talk about it. Who is the person who becomes a seeker? Somewhere along the line, you did figure out. Which it may not have been so clear, but you did figure out, and you did search for an answer. And you did not accept other offerings in the spiritual thing, and you discerned, somewhere along you discerned that, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Perhaps you made some mistakes earlier, but then you figured out. But there are others who will never figure it out.
And then there's even people who turn up in class and then leave.
Yeah, and they leave because they can't accept it.
They're
Because
not
they are
ready.
in their own thought world. And if any teacher doesn't say what they already think, then they are, what is is not for me.
I know already.
I know already. And I know what I want. And I know my path.
And I'm free already.
And I'm free already. And I don't need all this. Somebody to tell me what to do and how to be.
Yeah.
So this is where I say that you yourself have not discerned the reality of life. And this is the value. You understand what is the value when you see that life is fraught with limitation, even if you have peak of success. You still cannot escape. And you never get exactly what you want. You can have some highs, of course you can have some highs. But it doesn't solve the problem.
James Schwartz said something very nice about this. He said, as long as you think you can find the solution in samsara, you're not ready for Vedanta.
True.
It's very clear. Yeah.
It's true.
No judgment, just
No.
observation.
Yeah, it's just an observation that you think that this will solve my problem, you'll go for that. Or this will give me final happiness, or this with final, or whatever this is, then you will go for that.
It's a zero-win situation. That's also what he says. Zero-win.
Life is a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
You get some, you lose some.
Yeah. So the seeker is somehow, so what they say is some kind of a discrimination. But even if you come to Vedanta class, not that you know exactly why you have come.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. Right? Nobody sits and actually analyzes and says, yeah, artha is not giving me what I want, kama is not giving me what I want. Even dharma, being good human being, has its own limitation. So therefore, I need my freedom has to be from somewhere else. Then figuring out that limited plus limited, even in the spiritual world, will not give you freedom from limitation. So the solution has to be this, that I have to relook at myself. Who works it all out and comes to the class? Nobody. But somehow, somewhere, you did work it out. It was not so clear.
Yeah, it's so much more clear now.
Yeah.
That is the beauty.
Yeah, it's so much more beauty. So things that you had some impressions, now the teacher tells you very clearly. Then you said, ah. So you're right. It's always an intrigue that, sometimes your loved ones and you think that they are good, you want them to come to this teaching, and you feel so this thing that no, but somehow they are not interested. Somehow the time hasn't come for them.
Ishwara's order.
Yeah, there is an order.
It's a waste of time for the teacher and the student.
Yeah.
That's why it's the only teaching where you need to be qualified.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there is a natural thing. People will come and they will leave because the teaching doesn't resonate. There is no... So there is a match. There has to be a match between student and teacher. If teacher has a certain level, the students have to have that level for it to create a meaningful exchange. Otherwise, they'll drop out. And if you have, even if you may like the teacher, but if you don't have understanding of what I'm looking for and what can get me what I want, then again, that Purushartha is not very clear. What my goal, my final goal is not clear. So this is not a depressing value. Please don't think that, life is miserable. This is not the value. Yes, it has limitations, but it comes with great opportunities. So there are two things. One is you have to face these limitations without getting completely overwhelmed. And the second is that use this opportunity, right? Along with this comes this huge opportunity for final freedom. Use your life meaningfully. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.